All right, team. So last time we set up auth with kind in the Tamagui starter. So today we're going to set up tRPC so we can make queries to the API. So let's jump in and see how we do it. All right, just a quick refresher. So currently we have our web app and our native app over here, and you can log in and it'll take you to kind to get set up. You can log in with that and then jump back in, and then we can have a look at our console and we can see that we're now authenticated and we have a user object right there. Cool. So we are logged in. So the next piece is adding the tRPC endpoints so that we can make requests from our native app as well as our web app. All right, so to do that, we're gonna go in and we're gonna add a couple of packages. So the first thing is we're gonna jump in here. Let's close down the web one, and then we're gonna jump into cd packages/app. Right, so now what we're doing is we're going into this package JSON. This is where we wanna add in our stuff. To do that, what we're gonna do is we're going to go into we're going to cd into packages app, which is this package. So it's packages app. And we're going to want to add some packages to this here. So the packages we want to add, and the reason we're adding them here is just so that it works across both. So we want to use a couple. I'll paste them in here for us. tRPC Next, tRPC React Query, and then we're going to add TanStack React Query. All right, add that in, and then we're going to add it to this. Now what you'll see is, because we're running this in this folder here, it's going to only add it to this package JSON. So there we go. So you should see that all jump in there. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up a new package. So this is like what I was talking about with the workspaces here. So we're going to go API/package JSON. So in the monorepo, we create our packages like this. And what we need to do is set up our package to look like this. All right, so we're prefixing it like the rest of our packages, my UI, like that. Then what with version 0, which is fine, that's going to declare what the types are. And then we are going to have these dependencies. So for our API, we need the kind auth. We're going to need the tRPC client and server, possibly not the client. That could be a mistake there, but then we also need these. We need AWS JWT verify, so that's how we can verify JWT tokens coming from the front end. Super JSON to add some extra JSON fields, and Zod for validating our objects. All right, so we'll save that. Now what we'll do is we will run yarn in the root. So I'll just run yarn. And that'll install those guys for us. So we'll let that run. And then while that runs, inside of our next app, this is going to be the thing that actually serves our API app. We're going to use Next as the API host. So this will be in Next Pages API. We're going to create a new file in a tRPC folder, and it's going to be called tRPC.ts. That's cool. All right, so inside of that, we're going to paste not this code. We're going to have this code. So we can just talk us through here. So what's happening is we're pulling in the create next API handler from our tRPC server adapter for Next. And then we've got our app router, which we haven't defined yet, and our tRPC context, which we also haven't defined yet. And then we're just exporting a handler like this. All right, so if we compare it to the one that we have here already, that's exactly what we want. All right, so all set up, okay? Now what we want to do inside of our actual app, where we're writing the API in the package here, we're going to create a new file, and this is the index.ts file. All right, so this is where we're going to just, all we're doing here is exporting some things. And you can see here, so these are not created yet. We're looking for source index and source context. All right, so we'll add those in and then close that off. Now we'll move into the tRPC file. So that's an API, and we're going to create a new directory, source, and inside of that, we're going to have tRPC.ts. All right, so I'm going to grab that code, and I might just grab it from my 4x4 project because that's the latest. So we'll grab it from here. All right. So this is very familiar if you've used tRPC before, and there's because this is just the standard version. So I'll talk you through it. So this has come from, I believe, the newest, or it's following the newest T3 stack setup. So we're just importing some things from the tRPC server. Then we've got super JSON here, and then our context type, so that we can define what our context looks like. But that doesn't exist yet. Then we're initializing tRPC. This is usually just called T in a lot of repos. I like to call it tRPC, so it's a bit more explicit. And then here we've got our isAuthenticated middleware. So this middleware runs every request, and it checks if we use this middleware for protected procedures. So you can see here, so we use a procedure and then we wrap with this. And what this is going to do, it's going to say if there's no context user, it's going to throw an unauthorized message. Otherwise, it's just going to return next, and it's going to inject the context in there. All right, and then public procedures don't have any protection because we don't need it. And then create tRPC router just exports tRPC.router, which is this .router. So quite straightforward in that one. So we'll move on to the next file, which is our context. So this is inside of it's the source folder here as well. So I will grab that for us. And that lives in here. Now, this is looking for Prisma from our database, but we haven't set that up yet. So let's get rid of this. We haven't got Prisma in here yet. Haven't got that in there. Let's just clean it up so that it doesn't throw for us. I'm just going to say const user equals an empty object. All right, so let's talk through this one. So this is the context for tRPC, or our API, and it does a few things here. So what we're doing here is we got this JWT verifier. So when we send up a JWT from the front end, we can verify that it is in fact correct and valid. And we've got some types here, and then we're just defining our context user. What does that look like? So it's a user object from Prisma, which we haven't set up yet, plus the kind ID. And then our context options has a token and a user, and we use these in here when we're creating our inner tRPC context. And this is a little bit of a new way they're doing it now. Instead of just creating, they do this now for testing and stuff here. So we can create an inner tRPC context, and we use this, we actually call this inside of create tRPC context. So it's just a little wrapper in the middle. I think that's a newish introduction. We have a token and a user, and we also pass through Prisma. So this gives, when we make a tRPC, when we get it in our, let's just look here, in our routers, we get this context here. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. This is the context that we're creating on this side here. So when you do context.prisma, you can see it here, and you can do context.token or context.user. All right, so this is what we're busy building up here. Now, what you can see, what we're doing here is when we create a context, we are getting the request from Next. We're looking for headers, and we're looking for the authorization header over here. And I'm just casting this to auth header. Then what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing my kind issuer URL, which is basically your unique URL for kind. And then we set up a verifier with using the issuer. And then we also provide the JWKS URI. Now, this is quite cool. So what I'll do is I'll show you what one looks like because it is very useful to see. Okay, so I've just pasted in our issuer and then that's the remainder. So now if we look online, so this is a very cool little thing. So what it does is provides an endpoint for applications to look up that basically the settings or the keys, should say, for this authentication. So if I just fix this up, you'll see. So this is a public endpoint and it's used to verify the authenticity of a JWT. All right. So we're going to get this and then our front end can then use this URL to figure out if this JWT is actually correct, if it's been encrypted properly, or if it's been tampered with, I should say. Now we get our token, which is our auth header. So auth header looks like this usually. So auth header will look like bearer, and then it'll have like the token here. Yeah, let's call it like that, okay? That's what it'll look like. So what we're doing here is we're just splitting on the space here, and we're grabbing the second, so index 0, index 1. So we're grabbing that, and that's our token. Then we're verifying that token, all right? So we're now going to verify. Now what will happen is, I've put this in a try catch block. If this token is not valid, it will throw. And then that means we will catch it over here and just return a user of null. Because that means that token is either not there, so the user isn't logged in, or there's something wrong with it, okay? So that's what we're doing here. If everything goes well, we're going to get a payload. Now our payload will have a sub property. So I think inside of here, let's just run this web again so we can actually see. Oh, you can probably see it here. It's not here. But it will have a sub, and then the sub is the user ID from kind, right? So we cast this to ID, but that is what it'll look like, right? So sub will look like that. Now, once we have that, we can then look up in our DB, can do a lookup and find that user. So because we have users that can have many accounts, you could have a kind account, you could have, like, because we're coming from a legacy system, you could have a Facebook account, etc. We look for where the account is kind and the account ID matches the one we've been given in the token. And then from there, we return that user and inject them into the tRPC context, which is the create in a tRPC context, this function, and it will return the options.user and options.token as well as the Prisma object. And that is our context, okay? So that's all set up and ready to go. Now what we're doing is we are going to add to our TS config file to the API here. So we are going to just minimize all this. So in here, we're going to have a tsconfig.json file, and all it's going to do is have this in it. Whoops, not that. It's going to have this. Right, so it's just telling TypeScript where the entry point is for this and where to build from. All right, let's change these spaces to 2. It's being annoying. So we're just saying include the source directory, and then these other two other files that we haven't created yet. So inside of transformer.ts, this file, let's set that up so long. So it's going to be transformer.ts. Right. All we're doing here is just exporting the super JSON as a transformer. This is an interesting one. I've found this in this repo. Usually you just import tRPC and then use the transformer, super JSON, and just use it in play. But if we look at the source here, I think, where is the transformer used? Yes, it's not even We're not even doing that. So we actually don't even need that file. That's old. Ignore that one. We're importing super.json here. So usually, so what I've seen in the repos, in the samples, is the transformer comes in here, and then that just becomes transformer. And then I guess you can just change out the transformer quite easily, but it's not used as that much. It actually just creates a little bit of confusion. So we'll just skip that one. Okay, so the next one that we need to do is we need to set up in our root tsconfig file, because we've created this new package, we need to say my API is in packages API, right? So we're defining that special path so that we can call that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add inside of here, we're going to add so what is this? We need the index file. What is going on? Where have I done this now? I've created the files in the wrong spot. So I'm just going to drag them. These should live inside of API. Okay. And then we actually need this guy inside of API there. Okay. All right, sweet. So we've got the pages there. Sorry. Source tRPC. Okay, so now what we need to do is create an index file here. And inside of that, we are going to export. This copy paste thing is doing my head in. So inside of the source, let's go copy, paste. We are now have our root. This is going to basically be our root router. So look, you can see we're looking for routers example. So let's set up a new file here, routers/example.ts. That will bring us, fix that error. And then what we're doing here is we're getting create tRPC router from here, right? So it's this one. We are then importing all our routers. So this file will become pretty big over time. And then from here, we're going to just create an app router, and then we're going to define them. So example router, and then you'll have user router, project, etc., etc. And then we're just exporting the type, saying app router is a type of this. Okay, so this is our example router right here. So importing these things, we've got a public and a protected. So we've got examples of both. Hello, get all, get secret message, done. Sweet as. Okay, so that's basically tRPC all set up. I'm not sure why old mate's still complaining here. Let's check. Yep, let's just fix this. Great, no more complaints. Everyone's happy. And that's all be working now. Now, we are going to set up the tRPC provider. And this is what's going to provide tRPC through to all our layers. So inside of packages app provider, we're now going to create tRPC provider. So I'm going to go new folder. So that'll be new file tRPC provider /index.tsx. All right, so we're going to have this. Let's copy this. Cool. So this is looking for utils tRPC. I'm going to grab the more modern one here. I'm just going to copy this whole folder because that's going to save us some time. Okay, so inside of index, still looking for the utils here. So let's just grab that. I'm going to grab these two. Okay, so first things first, what's this util doing? This util. So this is setting up a tRPC client, all right? So we've set up the tRPC server, now we're setting up the tRPC client. So for React Native, this is what we're using here. So we're doing a whole bunch of things. This is like the manual setup version of creating a tRPC client. We're getting the base URL. We're importing all these things. We don't actually have this transformer anymore. So what's going on there? My API transformer, let me just check. Okay, we do need that, but we could just import. I guess that's why we could use transformer here, but I mean, realistically, it's the only place we're using it. So let's just stick it in here to make everyone happy for now. So that's fixed. App utils kind, that does exist as kind client. Okay, so that's all good. Okay, so what are we doing here? Going down further, setting up tRPC using create tRPC React. Right, then we're going, getting the base URL. So because it's Expo, we're checking if the production URL is there, if not dev. Otherwise, we're using localhost. Then what we're doing here is we're setting up an auth token ref. So we're storing the auth token in a ref. And we run useEffect. Now we call the get auth token function, which comes from our kind client. And then we grab the token and we set the auth token current to access token, right? That's just to do the little dance to get the token. Then we set up the query client here. So from here, we're going to use state, initialize a new query client with the default options. So I like to turn off refetch on window focus because it's annoying for me. And out of that, we get our query client. Then we set up a tRPC client with the transformer, which is super JSON. And then we set up the links. Now, this is usually just this piece that you'll see in most things. But what we need to do specially here is set the headers, right? And by doing this, it allows us to use our auth token ref as the bearer token for authorization. This is super handy. So like realistically now you can use any auth library. You could be using kind or anything that uses a JWT, and you can put it here, right? And then when we send this up, we're going to have bearer space token. We're going to submit to this URL, which is our Next.js API tRPC endpoint. Then finally, what we're doing here is we're returning a provider, right? It looks like this. And that's wrapping tRPC. We're passing in the client, tRPC client and the query client. And then we're wrapping the query client as well. Okay, so this is the React query work, which the TanStack React query. And then tRPC is wrapping that. And then every child is passed through here, okay? And this is the base tRPC provider. Now we have our tRPC web. So this is for native. And now we have our web version, okay? So we do all the work, the similar work, get the base URL. But you can see we don't have any calls to Expo or anything native in here. Then what we do here is we export, or we set up tRPC here. And we define all our things, and we have a slightly different way of getting our token. We just call it here. We don't store it. And we're doing the same thing as passing through as a bearer token here, and then we're setting our query client options all here. And server-side rendering has to be set to false at this point. So this will be something that will be an issue for us, but they are working on it. So for now, we have to turn this to false, otherwise it does not work. We're waiting for a library to be updated. And then we're exporting. So you can see it's a little bit different here to how we did it in the other one. With the other one, we were manually setting a provider. Here we are just basically exporting tRPC. And what it's doing is using the next helper here. And then we're just passing in a special config object through there. So it's a little bit different, but that's what we need to do for our next app. Okay. So then we've just been through all these things in the utils. So React Native one looks like this. And then our web one doesn't have a custom provider. So it just exports a function which returns children. All right, so it's a little bit different there. And the reason being is because in Next, I believe we do it slightly different because we use with, we wrap it with a with tRPC. So I'll just find it in here. I believe it comes through here. So here, so what we do in the app is we do this. So we go in here, app, we import tRPC, right? And then what we do is using this, we use the tRPC with tRPC call down here, okay? So it's a little bit different, but that's how we do it in Next, okay? So let's keep moving. What we need to do now is we need to also add in our app provider, we need to wrap tRPC. So we are going to look in here, app provider, and we are going to import tRPC, right? And then we're just going to wrap our app with tRPC here. Okay, so we're passing that down through all the children, or it wraps all the children, I should say. Okay, and that's all good to go. So let's see. So we've done that. We've wrapped it. Now we're gonna check this client kind auth. So that's in packages app, which we're now using use session. So that's all done. tRPC utils, which are done. It's awesome. All right, so let's give this a spin and hopefully we've wrapped everything and everything is working. I might just restart this just to double check. Let's have a look. Okay, so we got our basic screen here. Let's do something in a features home screen. Let's see if we can possibly use tRPC in here. So I'm gonna see if I have done this. So after the use session hook, now when we type, let's see if this works. Const, so they go tRPC dot example dot hello. So we can see that. Let's just jump in to remind ourselves what that looks like. You can see we're getting auto completion there. So this is the stuff that we want. So hello, and then we can input text. So we can say dot use query. Now the first part's the input. So we're gonna say text is Jeff. All right, and we're gonna say const we're gonna go hello query. And then let's just console log hello query and see if we're getting anything here. There we go, we got data. So if we pull that out, we go const data equals hello query. Let's log this data. What are we getting? Greeting. All right, so we can now, let's go hello, instead of saying welcome to Tamagui, we're gonna say data.greeting or, right, so now, hello Jeff, now we can say hello world. So we're making a request to our API to get this awesome amount of data right there. Now let's run another one just to make sure we're not tricking anyone. So we're gonna say this is gonna be all query is equal to trpc.example.getAll.use query, right? Let's see what all query.data looks like. All query, there we go, we're getting an array of hello, goodbye, hi again. All right, so that's all working. So that means that tRPC is now connected. Now, the other thing that we should just check before continuing is, can we make a call to a protected route? Right, so this one, protected procedure. We're not going to be able to do that yet because we haven't installed Prisma. All right, so that will actually wrap up this video. We will do the Prisma stuff in another one, in the next one, just to keep this this video too long. So we'll actually wrap that one up in another video just to keep this video nice and short. So what do we do here today? We have gone through and we've added in tRPC. We've added in the tRPC server. We've added it to the Next API. We've created a new package called API package in here with a new package JSON. So it's all contained by itself. And then we've set up the tRPC clients for both native and for web. Also, we can use these beautifully typed queries no matter where we're sitting. It can be in our native app. It can be in our mobile app. You can see here, if we change this to hello Ken, there we go. We're running the request and we're getting our data from our API. So very cool. And this is one of the strengths of this monorepo and why we wanted to stick with it, was just, and having all these things, like rather than using an external API like built on a different platform, we want to just have this monorepo so we can just reference our types, reference our queries, know all our endpoints. It's all just typed and just beautifully ready to go. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed that one, and subscribe to the channel so that you can see the next one where we're going to set up Prisma, and we will be on our way. See you soon.